So my most important story, I think ever, is called Uncle Sal, the Italian Uncle. And Uncle Sal is an amazing character. He doesn't exist in reality, but let's say he does because he's become my alter ego. Now, one thing I want to go back on before I begin the story with Gabby, my daughter, is that when I was much younger, before Gabby existed, I had an alter ego named Harvey, the 6-foot rabbit, a 6-foot invisible rabbit. It was based on a famous film. And Harvey, the main actor, whose name I forget at the moment, but it was a major American actor. The film was probably made in the early 60s, maybe. And he would walk around like this. But people couldn't see Harvey. Only the actor could see him in his mind. Okay? So people would ask a lot of questions. So let's say Harvey was the alter ego. And I fell in love with the idea. I didn't call it alter ego. I didn't know those words. So fast forward. Now I have a daughter. And at this point, she's only about 5. And her name's Gabriella. We call her Gabby. And she and I used to go into the local Amherst health club, sports club, whatever, that had a lot of good stuff, but was small. And it was small, so it was intimate. You met people. Gabby has, I think, an elusive personality. I think it was hardwired. And maybe evasive too. Anyway, so she's also very athletic and very flexible. She saw that these lockers, the sports lockers in the locker room, okay, men's locker room, because you can bring young girls into men's locker room, that you could get inside, she could get inside of a locker. Now, at this moment, I can't remember the exact size, but she would get inside and close the door on herself, okay? And then I would walk away, not far away. I would walk away and I'd pretend that I didn't know where she was. I would talk out loud. Where the hell is Gabby? I don't know where she is. I have no idea. I don't know what to do. I'm getting worried. Then I morphed it into talking to Paul Newman, the famous actor. Now, Paul Newman is a good person to choose because, for me, he's a great actor, and he was also a philanthropist, and he was also a proud Jew. But for Gabby, he also developed and produced food products. Newman had his own food company in which all the profits were donated to charity. So I would pretend to be talking to Paul Newman on a phone, and for Gabby to hear it. And it might go something like this. Yeah, Paul, it's me again. Yeah, you know what I'm about to say. Yeah, Paul, of course you've got good advice, but that's you. You're not here. No, I tried that. Yeah, and I tried that too. Well, she's just goddamn, rebellious, child with radical attachment disorder maybe, but, somebody who doesn't really want to cooperate, doesn't, compromise. But I love her, and she's a lot of fun. So, Paul, I'm not expecting you to tell me what to do, but I am letting Gabby know that I'm talking to you. And Gabby respects you too, so maybe some of this will rub off. Yeah, the word I was looking for, oppositional. So then I would be in the middle of a sentence and I would suddenly do what? What would I do? What would I do, Johans? Suddenly do what? To do as a surprise. Suddenly open the door to the locker. And Gabby would be in there, she would laugh hysterically. We both laugh. That was fun. That was absolute fun. That's a highlight of my time with her. Fast forward about 7 or 8 years, okay? And now Gabby's entering what they call puberty, entering adolescence. Now she's in middle school. And I was divorced quite a long time. And Gabby's living half with me and half with her mother. We're both living in Amherst, Massachusetts, but we have very different points of view. which is confusing for a kid. So Gabby becomes even more oppositional in certain ways. And now she's getting older. And now the stakes are higher. And now I'm really looking for answers. And then Paul Newman died. We were driving around in Times Square, and a ticker tape in Times Square, I swear to God, we were right there. It said Paul Newman died. So we had to change. We had to find somebody else to be the alter ego, to be, the person who was going to somehow intervene. And I came up with this guy that I called Uncle Sal. Now, it's a funny story how I came up with him, which I'll just digress for a moment. My father, who I respected a lot, worked for the Federal Communications Commission in Washington, D.C. It's a pretty big deal, and he went up pretty high on the food chain. And he told me once about a co-worker of his that he liked a lot, a guy named Pat Valicenti. Notice I remember a name from 65 years ago, maybe, okay? Pat Valicenti. And Pat Valicenti was, of course, Italian-American, and he was from Brooklyn. And Brooklyn, at that time, had a lot of Jews and Italians living nearby. And Pat actually knew more Yiddish, which is the language of East European Jews, than my father did. My father was born in the States, but he knew some Yiddish. Anyway, I never forgot that story. So I decided, well, there must be other people like Pat Valicenti in Brooklyn. And maybe in this case, the guy owned a haberdashery, which is like a high-end men's clothing store. And let's say it was in a really nice mixed neighborhood of Jews and Italians, and he loved all his customers. I mean, it was like what we call now a third place. People knew him, he knew them, he knew their story, he liked them a lot. So the guy had charisma, and he had self-confidence. And the guy dressed so well. If only, okay? He wasn't dressed like a gangster, he did it low-key, okay? So Uncle Sal comes into my life, and Uncle Sal, we know we've got him, on hold, let's say. But what happens one day, and this goes into Act 2 of this story, is that I'm getting on a plane at Logan Airport to fly to San Francisco, California, where I had used to live. And it's a 5-hour flight, a direct flight. And I get on into the middle seat. Why the middle seat? Did I choose the middle seat? Hell no, I hate the middle seat. But what happened was I got on late because I was on a phone call, even though I'd gotten there early. So I get on a middle seat, and right behind me, in the middle seat behind me, is a very large girl, very overweight, probably about 15 years old. And she's hyperventilating. And she's not quite yelling, she's kind of crying out to her parents. I wish I could do her voice, but let's say she was saying something like, "Why are you taking me on this flight? You promised you would not make me do this. I can't do this." Okay, but it's a 5-hour flight back to their home north of San Francisco. So one asks the logical question, how did she think they were going to get home? Okay, but logic doesn't work in these situations. And unfortunately, her father sitting next to her on the aisle seat, which by the way is my favorite seat, and her younger brother sitting on the window seat, who's completely zoned out on video games. They are intentionally ignoring her. Which means what? Which means that this has happened many times. Now, across the aisle in a middle seat is her mother. And I didn't know for sure it was her mother until later. And her mother obviously did not want to try again to deal with the girl, whose name I'm going to give as Mira. So I'm sitting in my seat, and I'm uncomfortable as hell. And I've got ADHD, I haven't eaten, and the RPMs of frustration, of hunger and angry and frustrated, are revving up, high RPMs. And the flight attendants are not bringing food. Nobody's bringing food. So it's hard. And I'm thinking, can I put up with this much longer? Oh, in fact, I don't think at this point we had even taken off. I don't think we had even taken off. So I'm thinking to myself, what could I do to intervene? And I try to think about what would Uncle Sal do? How would Uncle Sal handle this? And I'm going to try to, transform internalize. I'm trying to internalize the spirit of my alter ego, Uncle Sal, to this situation. And I'm thinking about all the things that could go wrong if you try to intervene with somebody else's kid, teenage girl on a flight. How many things could go wrong? We can't even count them. So in order to decide to do it, we're talking about a major risk. Hopefully we're talking about a calculated risk. So in order to do a calculated risk, I pull out my business card. And by now I'm a psychotherapist. And I work a lot with kids and teenagers. And I work a lot with kids who are ADHD, who are difficult, oppositional. So I'm used to that. And I believe that I have some ways of making them calm down, some form of meditation and breathing correctly. So I turn to the father and I hand him my card and I say, well, I'm a psychotherapist and I work with kids and I'd like to see if I can calm your daughter down. Surprise, surprise, surprise. He says yes. Now he could have said no, he could have called one of the stewardesses over, whatever, but he says yes. So I sit down. No, I don't even sit down at that point. I'm turned around in my seat, and he stays in his seat, and Mira is in her seat, Miri. And I say, Miri, you gotta practice breathing. And I teach her how to do the type of breathing we do in meditation. And the point of it is to get grounded, to get some calmness, to be in the here and now, to not be thinking about what if, to just be in the moment. So it works for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then she goes back to the same old, crying out to her parents, blaming them for how she's feeling, essentially. So then I realized the only way, and it took me a while to realize this, the only way she's going to calm down is what? If the father moves away from her. Father has to get in a different seat. Otherwise, she keeps doing it. She's doing it because she wants to get a rise, as we call it, out of her father. Now, the father, as it turns out, is Italian-American, like Uncle Sal, except that he's pretty passive. He's pretty introverted, and he's just kind of doing his own thing and ignoring. I think he's an architect. And I'm a member of the Jewish tribe, so it's an interesting, ironic thing. So finally I turn to him and I say, I forgot his name. Let's say his name was Sal. No, it's not Sal. Let's say his name is Vito. No, it's not Vito. Well, let's say his name is Frank, whatever. I turn to Frank and I say, Frank, as long as you're sitting next to her, your daughter, it's not going to change. I'd be willing to change seats with you if that's okay. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Surprise number 2, the biggest one. He says yes. Could have said no. Could have given me a hard time. Could have been suspicious. Could have said, well, what do you want to sit next to my daughter for? But no. He got up and we traded seats. So he went into the middle seat and I got an aisle seat. And right away, I launched into what I knew I had to do. I knew I had to intervene, that we could not we could not baby her. We could not indulge her. We had to give her feedback, realistic feedback, which kids don't get enough of, which is why Uncle Sal has come into the world. So I turn to Mira and I say, Mira, have you ever been in the cockpit of a plane, of a jet? Because Mira was afraid that the jet was going to crash, that it wasn't, that they didn't know what they were doing. And she said, yes, she had been in it one time. And I said, so you know that there's millions and millions and millions of engineering and safety devices that the staff who are trained use. And by you doing this, you're bothering almost everybody on the plane. Your father, your brother, your mother across the aisle, I think that's her. You're bothering me, bothering other passengers, and I think the flight attendants are going to come over, or maybe they already did. You're bothering the staff. Well, let me go back to the flight attendants, because that's really symbolic. The flight attendants, 3 of them, one at a time, female flight attendants, come by and they say to Mary, girl, you're doing such a great job. You're being so mature. You're being such a good kid. No, and no. Does that work? No. But did what I said work? Did it work? Yeah, it did. It did. She said she had been in the cockpit. She said she didn't disagree with me about the safety. And so I got her to calm down. And she stayed calm even through about 20 minutes of white-knuckle turbulence. I think she stayed calm through almost the rest of the flight. And meanwhile, the person who turned out to be her mother was validating me from afar, from across the aisle. And I love getting validation because I didn't get enough validation as a kid. So validation is a big deal. And I'm really, really happy about that. And I don't know yet for sure if she is the mother, but I'm assuming. So I actually go over to sit next to her, and she had bought me a drink, a real drink. And some of the other people wanted to buy me drinks. I was getting a fan club. I was getting a fan club on the flight. So I go over and start talking to her. And she's got total opposite energy of her husband. She's like fired up. She's got red hair. She's Irish. He's Italian. She's got all that energy. She's spontaneous. We really hit it off. She likes me. I like her. And I tell her I even know about this neighborhood she grew up in Philadelphia. Anyway, so I go back to my seat. The plane's about to land. And I'm thinking something ridiculous. But Uncle Sal steps in. I'm thinking, since I gave her my card, and since I'm going to San Francisco too, and they're living pretty close, that maybe she and I could have an affair while I'm there. Okay? Because she's close by. She seemed to like me. She's probably a little bit frustrated with her husband, certainly with her daughter, and the whole situation. But then, just in time, who comes in to intervene with me? You guessed it, Uncle Sal. And Uncle Sal says, Johnny, you don't need anything more than you already done. You've done so much today. You know, it's right in your kishkis. Kishkis is like right in your guts, all right? You don't need to do more, man. You've done it all. You got to let go. You got to get into the here and now. Act 3. I get off the plane and I immediately go to this cafe in Marin County, California, where I had lived for 9 years. Happens to be La La Land. People make fun of it as La La Land. La La Land, why? Because it's gorgeous. It's pretty, entitled, let's say. It's definitely mostly upper middle class and beyond. And it's got beautiful roads. It's got incredible weather. It's, an ideal place. And it's just north of San Francisco, just over the Golden Gate Bridge. So I find Robert, who is a good friend of mine. We used to play softball together. Or maybe it was hardball. No, it was softball. And he was divorced by that time. I was already divorced. And we're sitting, and Robert's got a great sense of humor. He's from England. And I start telling him the story, and he is laughing his head off. He's just laughing, really laughing. And he says to me, at the end of the story, he says, Johnny, you got to start writing this. You got to write this story. And somehow I hadn't thought of that, even though I love to write. So I said, "You are correct, Robert." And I immediately knew that I was going to start writing immediately tonight. Why? Because I was going to one of the most magical places in California, maybe one of the most magical in the world. It is a Zen retreat center, a Zen Buddhist retreat center. And it's a combination community and kind of monastery, and it has guest rooms, and it has communal dining room with some of the best food ever, and it has a farm. And it's located in a gulch. It's called Green Gulch Farm because there's all these mountains around it. And then on the other end, you walk about 100 yards past these horses and a farm, and you arrive at the Pacific Ocean. Okay, what could be better than that? So I go to the guest room, and in guest rooms are so immaculate. So you might know that Zen architecture is minimalist. It's minimalist, so that there's no clutter at all, none. So I'm laying in bed, and I know that in the desk or in the table next to the bed, in every top drawer, is what? In a regular hotel, what would be located in there? The Bible. But instead, in these drawers are located one of the most famous Zen books written in the United States in English called Zen Mind, Beginner Mind. Zen Mind, Beginner Mind. By the guy, the Zen Buddhist monk who came to the United States back in the 50s and brought Zen Buddhism to the United States. Really brought it. And guess what state he went to? Okay? Did he go to Idaho? Did he go to Alabama? Did he go to Arkansas? No, he went to California, obviously. And by the time he had died, which is years later, he had established at least 3 or 4 or 5 retreat centers. There was a bakery, all kinds of stuff, and a movement. He had created a movement. And I had been turned on to that movement from staying at the place and just being hungry for something new and needing it, needing to do what Uncle Sal said, needing to know my limits. So I read some of the book, I did a little meditation, and I let it go and recognized that, like Uncle Sal said, I had had a great, meaningful day in my kishkis. Thank you, Uncle Sal.